Memo to the Democrats and the fake news media. But I repeat myself. I hope you guys had a lot of fun for those 10 days when you were able to incessantly refer to Donald Trump as a convicted felon. Hope you got it all out of your system because that particular arrow was just removed from your rhetorical quiver this morning when Hunter Biden, everybody's favorite stripper impregnating crackhead whoremonger, was found guilty on all counts in his federal gun trial in Delaware. And first off, I have to concede that I am not exactly a disinterested party here. This trial, in the words of the immortal Chico Escuela, has been very, very good to me. Before it started, Hunter Biden's cocaine blues was doing fairly respectable numbers, 700, 800 a day. Then the trial starts, and it shoots back up to 2,000, 2,500, which is to say, whom do I talk to about getting a Hunter Biden trial every week? Because I could get used to this pretty easy, I think. And yes, I do enjoy being able to financially benefit in some small way from this dude's degeneracy and moral turpitude. I do, after all, live in a state where a Big Mac and a gallon of gas costs $15, so I will take all the help I can get from the Biden family. In fact, I feel like they probably owe it to me. So God bless America. God bless YouTube. God bless crack cocaine. As far as the Democrats go, I feel like maybe they weren't anticipating a guilty verdict because you saw what happened 10 days ago. They rolled out an entire media barrage of convicted felon this and convicted felon that. Hell, if you were playing a drinking game where you had to take a shot each time you heard an elected Democrat say the words convicted felon, you would have died from alcohol poisoning at least 5 days ago. But would they have rolled out an entire election year media blitz that was built around the words convicted felon if they knew the president's scumbag son was going to earn that very same appellation just a mere week and a half later, and thus undercut their own ability to use that phrase as a political cudgel with which to beat Donald Trump over the head and upper torso? I don't know the answer, but there's one of two likely conclusions, I think. Either one, they thought Hunter was going to get an acquittal or a hung jury, or two, they are astoundingly stupid, really terrible at politics, and congenitally incapable of seeing past the next 24-hour fake news cycle. So up until today, Joe Biden's re-elect strategy consisted of Trump is a convicted felon, January 6th, Bad Orange Hitler wants to take away your abortions. And now that the first card is no longer in the deck, they will need to pivot to something else. You'll also notice that Joe Biden's re-election message has nothing to do with any sort of claim that Joe Biden is good at being president, which says a hell of a lot. When you are an incumbent president and you're trying to make the election into a referendum on your opponent, it's because you're a really shitty president. And when you try to make the election a referendum on your opponent, that's sort of a tacit admission that you know you're a really shitty president. But I got a newsflash for Biden and the escapees from the mental asylum who are apparently running his campaign. Dude, you're the incumbent president. The election is nothing else but a referendum on your job performance over the last 4 years. Maybe in a Delaware Senate election where you only need 100,000 votes to win, you can get away with making the election into a referendum on the other guy. But you can't do that when you are the guy sitting in the goddamn Oval Office. And especially not when you have taken a blowtorch to the national economy, imported tens of millions of illegal aliens, and tried your very best to blunder us into a nuclear war. And also everything people buy costs 35% more than it did when your cadaverous ass was first installed in office. So please do make a note of it. I hope this little talk has helped. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where have you seen the latest new dance craze that's sweeping the nation? Move over, chubby checker, because this summer all the cool kids are going to be doing the Biden. You put your right arm down, you put your left arm down, then you stare straight ahead and you mustn't move around. Also, credit to Vice President the California Cackler for her uncanny ability to always look awkward and uncomfortable no matter where she is or what she's doing. And credit to the big black dude in the dress for boldly living his truth. Because you can't have a Joe Biden event on the White House lawn without a dude in a dress. I think there was an executive order, in fact, sometime early last year. Any road. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And have you seen the latest Disney Star Wars product? No, of course you haven't. Unless you're a paid industry shill from the Access Media, or unless you were only watching it so you could do a hate review video just like this one. Which I don't normally do, of course, and that's probably ultimately to my own detriment. I mean, if I wanted to take the path of least resistance to being a super duper world famous YouTuber who does this stuff for a living, that's what I would do. Watch every god-awful Disney Star Wars and Disney Marvel product and churn out videos about how god-awful they are. But I can't do it. I just ain't that strong. I can never be Doomcock. I can never be Nerdrotic. I can never be the critical drinker. Those men have inner reserves of serenity that I simply do not possess. And besides, I am turning 50 in 13 days. And when you reach a certain age, when you become acutely aware of the fact that there are more sunsets behind you than there are in front, in my own case at least, it's accompanied by an increased awareness that if I'm going to spend my time consuming content on a screen, it needs to be something that's informative or enjoying or edifying in some way or possesses some little tiny inkling of artistic merit. At the very least, it should be more entertaining than getting a fucking vasectomy. And I can report to you tonight that the Acolyte is not any of those things. In fact, all things being equal, I think I would rate my vasectomy as significantly more enjoyable than the experience I had trying and mostly failing to watch the first 2 episodes of this astoundingly unwatchable trash. And I'll just come right out and say it. If this isn't the intentional self-destruction of the Star Wars brand, then I have no freaking idea what it is. What's the story about? Not a clue. But it is very inclusive and diverse. So naturally, it has got a 91% score from the industry shill Access Media, the people we used to call professional critics, who never seem to actually review anything, as you may have noticed. When you read a review in the shill Access Media, it's just a diversity and representation scorecard. If the cast and crew tick all the right DEI boxes, and in this case, that means everybody in front of the camera is gay and black, and everybody behind the camera is gay and white, then the product gets a rapturously favorable review. If there's too many straight white dudes on the screen, it gets an unfavorable review. And the radical disparity between critic scores and audience scores, which is a phenomenon we first witnessed with The Last Jedi in 2017, that gulf just gets bigger and bigger with each shitty woke product they turn out. So the Acolyte currently has a 91% critic score and a 26% audience score. And you tell me which side of that equation has more honesty on it. The shill critics who know they have to write positive reviews in order to stay on the industry gravy train and keep getting those interviews and those premiere invites and those delicious swag bags, or the normal people who just want to watch a show that doesn't suck. We know what the Disney company line is. We have heard it dozens of times by now. The theory that says all downvotes and bad reviews are from toxic fans and review bombers and misogynists and istophobes who just hate strong women of color. But really, Kathy Kennedy? Really, Leslie Headland? You're going to keep playing that tired old bullshit card even when the disparity between critic scores and audience scores now stands at an astonishing 70%? It used to be, not that all that long ago, that audience scores were almost always higher than critic scores were. And then The Last Jedi happened. And for 2 weeks before that piece of shit came out, we got the mother of all gaslighting campaigns. This is the best Star Wars picture since Empire. It is a filmic masterpiece. Rian Johnson is such an incomparable auteur, such an artistic genius, that we're giving him his own Star Wars trilogy. How did that wind up working out? Anybody remember? And then the movie comes out, and people went to see it, and 60-odd% of them said, correctly, this fucking sucks. And a similar sort of trajectory took place, both with cinematic Star Wars and televised Star Wars, or streaming Star Wars, or whatever you want to call it. On the big screen side of things, they made The Force Awakens in 2015, and it made a metric shit ton of money at the box office. Most people liked it reasonably well, in spite of the Mary Sue girl boss protagonist, and Kathy Kennedy looked like a genius, however briefly. And then they opened up the woke floodgates and started making Star Wars movies for people who hate Star Wars. The Last Jedi managed to turn a profit, just barely, even though it sucked and everybody mostly hated it, but it was way the hell less of a profit than the first picture made. Then you get to The Rise of Skywalker in 2019, and that thing was a debacle and a disaster in every conceivable way that a thing can be. So much so that they slapped a moratorium on any new Star Wars movies, a moratorium that has lasted for over half a decade now. And then, of course, you had the two one-off pictures that were outside of the main series, Rogue One and Solo, the former of which was kind of okay, even though it was straight-up nostalgia porn with a one-dimensional girl boss protagonist who's only got one facial expression, and the latter of which, Jesus. What am I even supposed to say about a movie where they turned Lando Calrissian into a dude who fucks robots, and they thought it would be a good idea to have Phoebe Waller-Bridge play a feminist social justice droid? But I guess it's fitting that Solo and The Last Jedi both came out in the same calendar year, because that removes all doubt about the fact that 2017 was the year when the wheels came off for Star Wars on the big screen. And on the streaming side, it wasn't all that much different. They were launching the Disney Plus service. They wanted a flagship Star Wars product to put on it and grow the subscriber base. And they came up with The Mandalorian. And everybody loved The Mandalorian. For the first 2 seasons, at least. Before the dark times. Before the woke floodgates were thrown open and the show turned into a dog shit sandwich. And since then, without exception, every Star Wars product they have put out on Disney Plus has been so god-awful. I couldn't even tell you the last one I managed to finish. Obi-Wan Kenobi never made it to the end. Book of Boba Fett never made it to the end. Andor never made it to the end. And yeah, I know some people liked Andor, but sorry, I just don't get it. Ahsoka? I don't even think I made it to the halfway point with that one. Since I am a grown man and don't watch cartoons, I have no idea who that character is, and she means nothing to me. Disney Star Wars managed to become such an unintentional parody of itself that we wound up getting that famous South Park episode where Kathy Kennedy runs around screaming at people to put a chick in it and make it lame and gay. And then they put out this latest piece of shit, which is so mind-numbingly, indescribably terrible. It's almost like Kathy watched that South Park episode and said, okay, you want to see lame and gay? Hold my fucking beer. Now, I was on the record, and I think I made a video about it a while back, as saying I didn't think The Acolyte was actually going to get made, and I didn't think the Rey movie that is supposedly coming out in 2026 was actually going to get made. And the jury is still out on that one, I guess. Because it looked for a while there like Kathy was right on the verge of being fired, and I thought, and I don't think I was alone in this, that she was announcing projects on her way out the door that she knew wasn't going to be made just as an act of spite, like a baby chucking her $200 million toys out of the pram. But by God, they actually made The Acolyte, and they spent somehow $180 goddamn million on it. What did they spend it on? Unclear. It wasn't big-name actors. Carrie-Anne Moss is the only recognizable face you're going to see in this thing, and she is stone dead with a dagger in her chest within the first 5 minutes of the first episode. And for the very brief time that she is on screen, she looks so disinterested, I was half expecting her to break the fourth wall, Deadpool style, look right at the camera and say, look, don't judge me. It was a good paycheck. They only needed me for 2 days. Get off my back. And what was the point of only casting one recognizable actress and then immediately killing her off? Well, I can't say for sure, but my best guess is that you, the viewer, were supposed to say something like, hey, it's Trinity from The Matrix. I remember The Matrix. Remember those fight scenes from The Matrix? They should do one of those on this show right now. Which they kind of sort of tried to do, but it sure doesn't come off very well. It's like Leslie Headland can't decide if she wants to rip off The Matrix or rip off Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, so she just does a bit of both and equally badly, so you wind up with Crouching Matrix, Hidden Jedi. Now, what is there in Leslie Headland's professional CV that indicates she's the right person to write, direct, and produce a big-budget science fiction project? Beats the hell out of me. I perused her career credits earlier today, and it appears she is one of the new breed of woke Hollywood creatives who doesn't know how to write anything except self-inserts. She directed 2 movies about 10 years ago, One of which is about a girl who got bullied in high school, and the other of which is about how cute and funny it is to be sexually promiscuous and cheat on your significant other. The actual title of the picture is Sleeping with Other People. She's also written some stage plays. She's done a few episodes of a couple TV shows I never heard of, but I cannot find anything in her career history that would recommend her to being the showrunner of a $180 million Star Wars product. On the one hand, she claims to be a big, huge Star Wars fan, but practically in the same breath, she vomits out a bunch of nonsense about how, it would have meant so much to me when I was a kid to see myself represented on screen in Star Wars. Like, really? Is that something you want to have said out loud in public? That your self-image is contingent upon seeing someone just like yourself in a freaking Star Wars movie? Like you would have had a more well-adjusted childhood if George Lucas had written a square-faced, purple-haired, dog-ugly lesbian with a very, very serious daddy issue into his story? Are you serious right now? And yes, if this chick got "I have daddy issues" tattooed across her forehead, it would only be slightly less subtle. This chick is a walking, breathing daddy issue. And who knows, maybe Kathy Kennedy gravitated toward Leslie Headland because they've got some of the same psychological issues. Kathy Kennedy, as we know, is a 70-year-old straight white woman who very desperately wishes she was a 30-year-old black lesbian. Leslie Headland is a 40-year-old white woman, lesbian, who also desperately wishes she was a 30-year-old black lesbian. And so every new Star Wars product from here on out is going to have a 30-year-old black lesbian protagonist. As far as the writing and the acting goes, let me just say that for the amount of writing she has apparently done, and on a professional basis, it seems like Leslie Headland shouldn't still be this terrible at writing dialogue. If you handed me these screenplays in isolation and didn't tell me what it was or where it came from, I would conclude rather quickly that it was shitty Star Wars fanfic written by some teenage lesbian somewhere. And that wouldn't be an unreasonable conclusion, because I have no adjective that does justice to how stupefyingly bad this dialogue is. And it occurred to me, as I was struggling through episode 2, desperately trying to get to the end, that the writing in actual Star Wars today is significantly worse than Star Wars fanfic was 20 or 25 years ago. And the acting? Granted, there is a limit to how much an actor can do with dialogue like this, no matter how talented they are, but how best to put this? Let's just say there are vast stretches of this show when I would not have raised an eyebrow if everybody suddenly took their clothes off and started copulating with each other, because the line deliveries in this thing are so impossibly bad. It makes you feel like you're watching a Star Wars porn parody, which might be an insult to Star Wars porn parodies, but the host digresses. How would I sum up The Acolyte in 3 sentences or less? It's a story about a strong, powerful, non-binary they-them of color who don't need no Jedi for nothing. It's a story that reminds us how much better filmed entertainment can be, nay, how much better the world can be, when the people running the studios are all gay white females instead of straight white males. It's a story that reminds us that all black characters in Disney Star Wars must have dreadlocks. And ultimately, most importantly of all, it's a story about how you can never ever go wrong when you put a chick in it and make it lame and gay. Thanks very much indeed for watching. See you next time. May the female force be with you. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.